Welcome back to another podcast. I am your host, Mike Montague, author of Playful Humans. The new book is out. Go check it out on Amazon or, Kindle, if you like that as well, the electronic version. And we have another author here, Eric Farewell, author of Farewell to Normal, a transformative guide to adventure, excitement, and personal happiness. It sounds right up our alley here on Playful Humans. He is a playful human, mostly around aviation and paramotor aviation at Impact. So we're going to learn all about that and more. Here we go. Let's get started. All right, Eric. We like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by my new thesaurus. I went out and bought a thesaurus, but when I got home, all the pages were blank, and I have no words to describe how angry I am.
Not a single word.
No. The official joke of the week is, why did the egg have the day off? It was Friday.
Oh, come on now.
No, you would think I could do better than that after 200 interviews here on the Playful Humans podcast, but I feel like if you've had 199 other jokes, if there were better ones, I probably would have shared them by now.
It's one of those tough things. My 9-year-old daughter came into the kitchen yesterday and she says, "Dad, what's a pirate's favorite letter?" It's like, "Arg? C?"
Yeah.
She goes, "Yeah, it's C." Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's C or R. One of those two. You can tell one back for her. Do you know what the old pirate said on his birthday?
No.
I'm 80. Okay. You have the Aviator show, which is at Aviator on YouTube, which is amazing. So if people are watching the YouTube version of that, they need to click the link below, hit subscribe. We also got the Aviator show on Twitter and everything else. People can find you at ericfarewell.com or find the book Farewell to Normal. But I think we should probably start with the book and how you ended up feeling like you had a message to share with everybody after all the businesses, trials, tribulations, successes, ups and downs, literally breaking your back a couple of times. How did you end up with this message to share with the world?
Man, it's funny because as any author who has any emotions they have the imposter syndrome where we don't believe that we deserve to write a book. And I met with several different publishers and they're all like, "No, Eric, you have lots of books in you." And I'm like, "No, I'm just a kid from Florida. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about." And I got convinced to write a book, and man, I finished writing it in 2020. And as soon as I finished the final edit, I was like, "Oh crap, I've got like 30 more book ideas." It just flooded in. I'm working on another book right now. And it's really interesting, that process of how much thought goes into writing. I think that real thinking is writing. When you start to write is when your brain actually locks in and helps you understand what you believe. And I've been blessed and challenged by many adventures in my life, and Lord knows there's quite a few of them in the pages of that book, from riding a motorcycle to Alaska, which was actually Tennessee to Pennsylvania to Florida to Alaska to San Diego and back, in which I totaled 2 motorcycles, broke my leg, still bought another motorcycle, and 2 weeks later rode it to Alaska with a broken leg. Flying airplanes across the country as a 16-year-old kid, just crazy adventures, each of them teaching me different lessons that were really inspirational and incredible, that have allowed me to get to where I am today in life, which I'm very blessed.
Now, I know a little bit of your backstory, but I love to ask this question of people, like if they ever had like a day job, and it sounds like you did not. So you started, your first business, started working at 7, started your first business at 13 and kind of never looked back. Was there somebody that was an inspiration for you? Is this a family trait, or how do you think you ended up as a playful human for life, basically?
So I have had a day job. My great-grandmother in 1931 started a restaurant out of her home because it was the Depression and she needed to eat. Her husband had passed away 2 years prior. She had two kids, my grandfather and grandmother, and great aunt, whatever you want to call it. And she started this restaurant. 78 years later, it finally shut down. So I was born 100 yards from that restaurant, and I started working there when I was 7. That was my day job. And I worked there off and on until it closed. I love the restaurant industry. I love serving people. It's really ingrained in my DNA. And then, of course, I was born to entrepreneurial parents. So my mother and my father ran a book business for almost 30 years, and they sold books all over the country. Wow. So as quickly as I was deposited on this planet, I was given the opportunity to A, bring value, provide value, and earn from it. And B, realize that working for hourly rate or hourly wages is not for me. I never received a raise except when the minimum wage went up in my family's businesses. And that didn't sit well with me, especially because I had big dreams. I wanted to fly. Flying for me was an escape. It was the place where I could feel safe because no one else could hurt me but me.
Well, I mean, there's so many things. I feel like every time we answer a question, there's like 5 more things that we could unpack, but I'm trying to ask you the usual stuff or things that people could learn in your book and other things. So I guess the question that's coming to mind for me is, how do you think about your self-concept in this? Because somebody asked me this question the other day with my book, if I considered myself an author or a good writer. And when I was a kid, I was dyslexic and a mess. Like I could get great scores in math or science or whatever you wanted, but English was always the one that I had a C and like dragging across the finish line. But then spell check and Grammarly and stuff came out, and all of a sudden it wasn't about how well you write. I also had a great college professor that said that, like, I heard the music in the words and I was a good storyteller. And he's like, Mike, that's what editors are for. Like, don't worry about the spelling or where the comma goes. Just get the story down, and then we'll have somebody else that's good at grammar, fix that stuff for you. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. Like, okay, maybe I am a writer.
And everything.
Yeah, I feel like with you, as a pilot, an author, an entrepreneur, what would you call your media maker? Which of those things do you feel like is you? Are they all part of you, or do you have an identity that's separate from all of those things?
So I think that's actually an excellent question. The identity piece is really interesting. I have found throughout my life, I'll be 39 in a couple of weeks, and basically every time I found a passion or a hobby or an interest, I have found a way to make money at it. And for many people, they're like, oh, don't make your hobbies your business. It'll stop being fun. Yes. And it's way more fun when you're making money at it, at least for a while. So, you can always sell businesses. You can always spin things off. I still love all the businesses that I own. I love doing the activities within them. They're all fantastic. We have Aviator, which is a paramotor flight training business, Limitless, which builds the paramotors. We have National Stoll, which is actually an aircraft racing series, which is really fun. All of these things are tied to media companies. So I don't think you could say that I'm one thing. At this point in my life, I'm retired. I spend time with my wife and my kids. We live in Austin, Texas, and I consult. I coach. I get to help other entrepreneurs find their own journeys. I do write. I love to write. Well, let me rephrase that. I hate to write, but I have much that I need to. I started writing pretty heavily in my early 20s on a blog, this thing called Zanga back in the day, and had about 200,000 people a day that were reading it. And so there's all these eyeballs and comments. And I've learned that this interaction, this idea of being able to share my thoughts with the world was really special. And it helped me isolate what those thoughts actually were and lock them down. And I think that's something that's really important for each of us. My kids are at a really cool school called Acton Academy, and they voted. They added a Socratic discussion and voted on whether or not the school was going to allow the use of AI. And they said for high school and above, yes. But for middle schoolers and elementary students, they need to learn to write, to learn their thoughts. And I'm like, I love that. I'm a little bit sad because mine are not quite in high school yet, and they have a lot of writing to do. But I'm really proud of the fact that they're learning how to think. So to answer your question of the most roundabout way possible, at this point, I just want to be a family man, and etc. And I learned that from my friend John Vroman. He runs a group called Front Row Dads. Amazing baseline. Like, how can I be a family man first? The rest can be defined by the user. How's that?
So most of the businesses have been around flying, and it's actually something we haven't talked about this podcast in 200 interviews is what you get from flying and how is that play? And I can definitely see, if people don't know what paramotors are, that's basically parachuting with a big fan on your back, and you can fly around and spend all day up there. What is it about that in flying that attracted you as the play, and why is this a form of like flow state or pleasure, intentional living for you?
Absolutely. When I was 3 years old, to give some context to this, I was born 100 yards from that restaurant, and on that property there was a runway. My grandfather flew in World War II. My grandmother got her pilot's license. My mother sold it on her 16th birthday. My uncle spent, I think, close to 40 years flying for United Airlines. Almost all my cousins fly. It's in the blood, right? But at 3 years old, I got to climb into the back of a 1978 Belanca Super Viking, and we went and did barrel rolls over the orange groves. And I was 3. And I remember how it smelled. I remember how it felt, the absolute freedom of climbing up the top of a giant mountain of clouds and then diving off the backside of it. And that feeling that no one could touch me, that nothing could go wrong, and absolute authority of my body, absolute authority of my world. And I became obsessed. So at the age of 7, I discovered ultralights, where you didn't have to wait till you were 16 to solo. And I started working to make money to buy an airplane. And at 13, I bought the airplane kit to build it myself and learned that ADHD kids should not build airplanes. So a couple weeks later, I put it up for sale on this new thing called the internet, and I sold it. And that launched a aircraft sales career for me for the next 5 years until I broke my back the first time in an aircraft crash. But flying enhances your perspective of yourself and of the world around you. Astronauts call it the overlook effect, where you start to understand something different in your heart. And I love to fly all kinds of things. We have a T-shirt that says "Aviator #fly all the things," because I literally, like, a perfect day is like RC, drone, paramotor, airplane. If I could find a dirigible, I would. Like, you name it, I want to fly it. It's a fantastic way to see the world. And for many years of my life, for most of my life, it has been the obsession that allowed me to get grounded into my own heart. And a lot of what I think is really beautiful about what you do here on Playful Humans is you help highlight the importance of play. And for me, that the importance of play is really about playing with my own inner child, taking his wounds and expressing for him what he didn't get to express as a child. I had a really tough childhood. You know, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh yeah, it's great. You know, you have a healthy family of 5 kids, you've got all these things, but there's plenty of trauma. There's plenty of challenges. There's plenty of years with Christmases that were comically, I mean, we're coming up on Christmas, so it comes to mind. One year I got toilet bowl cleaner for Christmas.
Oh my gosh. That's
the next year I got a Bissell sweeper and toenail clippers. Wicked cool, right? So that's not to say that that's traumatic. There's plenty of people who've had it way worse than me, but there were
depends on how you were being asked to clean the toilet before you got the cleaner, right?
That's solid. That's very solid.
Could have been a gift. Could have been a great gift.
So all that to say, for me, flying is absolutely meditative. It's that opportunity to get in touch with your inner child, to get in touch with your soul, and to get really deeply grounded in the moment, because the moment you take your eyes off of what you're doing, you die. So kind of an important thing.
I love this. And again, I hope everybody is getting the overall message of the playful life and all the adventures that you've been able to string together in your life. But we can't skip over this sidebar, which is the plane crash and breaking your back. What did you learn? What is it like to be in a plane crash and breaking your back? I got to imagine there's a lot of life-changing moments or lessons learned in that experience. Can you tell us about it?
So I was no stranger to pain, but I'd never broken a bone. I hand propped this aircraft. It was a pusher propeller airplane, and I walked around the wing as the airplane revved and then knocked me over. So not flying the airplane, I'm hanging to the outside of it as it runs about 30, 40 miles an hour through a fence into a concrete block wall, with my head being the second thing to hit the wall. So about 40 minutes later, I woke up. The airplane was still running above me. And I woke up, I'm covered in blood. I stand up, I turn the airplane off. I hobble around the hangar wall, and I sit down in my grandfather's wheelchair that was sitting there. And as I sit down, I'm pulling my phone out to call my dad, my Nokia 5150. This puts the date on it for you.
It survived the
yes, of course. It's still actually making phone calls as we speak, but I love that phone. I'm calling my dad because I was 17 years old. This was 2 weeks before my 18th birthday. In fact, we're 4 days from the anniversary right now, I believe. And what's really interesting is I knew I was hurt, but I didn't know how badly. I knew I was bleeding really badly from the face. And someone had come into work early, and they saw me. And They called the 911, EMT show up. EMT's like, sir, you have a head injury. And I'm like, I know, but my back hurts. No, sir, you have a head injury. I'm like, I know, but my back hurts. And they did nothing. So angry, of course, this is the emotion that I had learned to control as a kid, not to control, but to utilize and to feel was anger. It's the only emotion I had. So I angrily waved them away. My dad drives me to the hospital. We sit there for over an hour. I've got a beach towel soaked in blood. It's stuck to my head. And they finally say, oh, sir, your back hurts. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. But what's really interesting is that's been over 20 years ago. And I've lived in pain ever since. I broke my back a second time 10 years after. And living with pain is a really interesting challenge. It's something that I think each of us get given different levels of pain, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, different types of torment. And it's exactly what our soul needs. It's exactly what we are designed to handle. My wife would never want to carry my pain. It would not be something I'd ever want to see on her. My children, never. But this pain I can carry. And I do a lot of work to make it better. I've tried, you name a holistic health thing, I've tried it. Or I'm still doing it and investing in it. We were talking before the show. I was just at the chiropractor. Like, we're constantly doing whatever I can. But living with pain is such an interesting gift because it allows you to see the world with so much more gratitude. You know, it's just such a different place.
Do you think that's a nature or nurture optimistic view of it, or something that you had to learn? Because other people choose the opposite. They give up, or they feel sorry for themselves, and they don't move on with that pain.
There's a choice that we all get to make every day. You can choose to be defined by the pain you carry, or you could choose not to. You could choose to be a victim or a victor. My friend Nick Santadesasso wrote this great book called Victim to Victor. And I quote him in my book, actually, because it was so pivotal for me to recognize that for whatever reason, I don't know what the secret sauce was, I never played the victim role. I was hoping to go to the Air Force Academy. My whole plan was to fly jets for the Air Force. Of course, they're like, you're never going to fly. You've got 5 broken vertebrae. You're not going to fly. And so I didn't give up that part of my life. I stopped flying for a few years, went on to do much safer pursuits. I started surfing, racing motorcycles, scuba diving, skydiving, the safer things. I proceeded to break 31 more bones over the next 5 years. But when I finally came back to flying, it was like coming home to myself and stepping beyond my fear into that place of gratitude. And to this day, I think that for many people who aren't doing the inner work, the turmoil of dealing with your traumas and meditation and breath work and all these different somatic tools that we can use today, for many people who will never do that work, flying is the one place they can get in touch with the truest form of themselves. So I think it's a huge blessing.
It's really interesting. A weird question came to mind here about, you kind of felt like you did that to yourself. Do you find the childhood, baggage different than the physical injuries that, like, if you're surfing, you're riding a motorcycle, that you're committing to a certain amount of risk. And if you hurt yourself, that's a little bit different than being in a plane where somebody else wrecks it or somebody hits you with a car. I'm sure you've been in some of those accidents too. If you've driven.
I have.
You feel that processing those are any different, or basically it's the same thing? You got to say, hey, this happened. I'm moving on. I'm finding the next thing. And
we're going to go way deeper than what I think that you intended, but I'll go with it.
No, that's where I was going, I think.
All right. So the deeper answer is, I believe that our purpose on this planet is to truly feel emotions and to truly process them, to actually experience the emotion versus trying to hide it. Most men, most women, they doom scroll, they get addicted to porn, they drink, whatever it is. When we have these opportunities to come face to face with our mortality, with our fear, with our whatever it is, leaning in and actually being present with those feelings is the journey. And we can try to run, we can try to hide, we can try to deflect, but those lessons are still there for us, and they'll always come back around. That doesn't matter what your religious beliefs are or whatever else. I just think that there's so much value in being present, and again, choosing not to be the victim. There's plenty of things I could victim. I can sit here and cry and complain and tell you my sob stories, and there's plenty of them. But I just am so grateful that I've started building this practice in my life of how do I experience bliss? How do I take everything that's painful and experience it as bliss? Like, my sister's a quadriplegic. She was in a skydiving accident. She doesn't get to experience physical bliss the way that I do. So I have to experience it for her. Not really for her. That's codependent, but you get what I mean. It's a it's a fascinating challenge for me to get deeper into my own body and into my own soul and understand why I'm here.
So I think we've been covering it so far, but you've made millions of dollars. You've had successful businesses. You've done the adventures. What's left on the bucket list? And what do you think maybe people don't know who haven't had those things, but have dreamt about it and never taken those risks? I guess the question for somebody like you is, what's it feel like on the other side of those things? Because so many people dream about them.
Ooh, great question. I had the conversation 2 days ago with a young man. He's 22 years old. His dad's one of my clients. And I'll give you some of the answers I gave him, because for so many people, they don't have a passion. They don't have a direction. They don't know where they're going or why. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. You know, I've always known what I wanted to do. I wanted to build companies and I wanted to fly. I really enjoyed both with so much reckless abandon. About 6 years ago, my brother passed away. He was 22 years old. And it was a car accident. It was happened so fast. We didn't expect it, obviously. And all of a sudden, here I am sitting, making at that point about $6 million a year, $4 million a year. And I'm working 100 hours a week. I barely know my kids. My wife and I are in hell in our marriage. But I'd made it, right? I'd done everything that I was supposed to do. I have 25 employees. We're doing great. Life is no, I was empty. And it took me a while to realize it. It took me a while to recognize that real success was not just about the monetary. There's a book that changed my life called No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. And this is a book for men and women. It's not just for men. But when I read that book, I realized that I wasn't playing all out, that I wasn't playing from a place of abundance. I was playing from a place of fear. I was playing from a place of ego, of needing to be told that I was good enough. So as I started to step away and step back and look at what I really wanted in my life, I wanted a great relationship with my wife. I wanted my kids to come and hang out with me and talk to me and be my friends. I wanted to meet them where they were. And so I started this stripping process of stepping away from all the things that fed my ego. And now I have a pretty demure life. Like it's not all it's cracked up to be, as far as like, oh, once you make millions, you're going to be happy. No, you're not. You're only going to be as happy as much as you love yourself. You're only going to be as able to love others as much as you love yourself. Learning to understand you is the process. And what I've found to be really wild, and this gets a little woo-woo, but I believe that once you get in alignment with your purpose and your mission in the world, once you start to understand why you're here, that alignment creates a resonance. And by the way, a lot of that alignment is found in play, right? That's that playful side, that joyful side, the part where everything you're doing feels like just pure happiness. Once you get aligned with that, the resonance that you create in your nervous system with the universe, money's a byproduct. I mean, I could tell you story after story from this year. I was wake surfing in Powder Mountain, Utah, in Eden, Utah, and I get a call from the Army. Mr. Farewell, we seem to have not paid you. It's in 2019 or something. I don't remember what year it was. It would be $80,000. Okay, I'm wake surfing. I'm hanging out there with Reed Hastings from Netflix. Like, this is crazy. But it's not something I was seeking. It's not something I'm trying to pull out of the universe. Instead, I'm trying to pour into the universe. And I get so blessed on the backside of it. And it's so much more fulfilling than money ever could be. Because all the time people who are making lots of money, they're just moving their benchmarks higher and higher. They're going to buy the next house. They're going to buy the next car. They have to buy the next boat. And I've had all those things and they're great. I still have some. I live in a great house in a great neighborhood. And we have our Florida home. We have lots of little trappings of wealth, but that's what they are. They're traps. And I think that if you don't learn to be joyful and grateful in the body and life you have right here, right now, without those things, you're never going to actually be happy. Sorry for the monologue.
No, I love everything about it. I second all of it. I think one thing that I've noticed in there that is the hard part is kind of like you said, people finding what that thing is for you. And that's why I've tried to showcase so many different versions of it, from athletes to jugglers to magicians to voiceover actors to artists and painters and writers and creators or cyclists and things on this show, because I think sometimes I'd love to ask you about the struggle. I think sometimes people feel like their life's purpose should be hard, or it should be big, or it should it should feel like something that's going to take a lifetime to pursue. But I've kind of found the opposite, that really what your thing is when you're aligned in that playful state that you mentioned, is it's the stuff that's easy. It's the stuff that people ask you to do when you're not even trying to do it. And you're like, well, nobody would ever pay me to fly airplanes. I love it too much. You know what I mean? Or nobody would ever ask me to pay me to host a game show, but that's what I'm doing Thursday night. I'm going to somebody else's company party and they're paying me $750 to do it. And I get to goof around for,
awesome.
a couple hours. Sure. Like that doesn't feel like that should fit. So I know you do a lot of coaching and stuff. I guess the last question here would be, do you have any advice on how to identify that thing, or how do you know when it's hit that resonance spot?
The question I usually ask for some people, if you're 22 and you don't know what your passion is, or if you're 32, you're 42, you may just not have enough mileage yet. You may not have enough mileage to know what you want. You may not have been witness to enough cool things. You may not have found people who inspire you. When I was 13 years old, I went to my first internet marketing conference, and I followed the speakers around the room, and I begged them to help them. So I wanted to learn what these guys knew, how they were making millions of dollars on the internet. I was so fascinated. Very soon, I had mentors. I had people that I could follow around and ask questions. I could offer them some value, carry their coffee, carry their briefcase, whatever it was. I ended up moving across the country multiple times to different people's homes in my high school years. By the way, you mentioned college earlier and brainiac stuff. I'm a homeschool high school dropout with no college experience. So anyone can do this. All right. I've never taken the SAT. It's definitely not for everyone. But you may not have enough mileage, A, and B, that's okay. Learn to accept that about yourself and learn to start to seek, trying to build momentum by constantly surrounding yourself with people who inspire. And that can be on your Instagram feed. It doesn't have to be in person, but eventually it needs to be. Eventually you need to be surrounded by people that inspire you. And if you don't know exactly what brings you joy, or what you think your gift is for the universe, because our whole purpose is to find our gift and give it away, right? That's the purpose. Yeah. What's really interesting and unique is that when you start playing with different questions, because most of the time I ask someone, hey, what's your purpose? What is your passion? They're like, oh, well, and they list off all these different things they've done professionally. And I say, hang on, if I give you $15 million in cash right now, which by the way is the number for almost anyone to live forever without ever having to work again, $15 million, you throw it in an account, it generates you 10% a year. You're good on that. You could live crazier, more complex lives and buy your yachts and stuff, but you don't need that. Right? If I give you $15 million, we put it in a high yield account. What do you do with your time? Because that's your real passion. Remove the factor of making money and figure out what it is you want to do. I wanted to teach people how to fly butt fans, paramotors, little fan you put on your back, you run into the sky. It's amazing. I was passionate about this. I was already a flight instructor in ultralights. I loved teaching. Somehow I turned that from an industry with 1,500 people in the US to an industry where we've now trained over 3,000 people. It's generated 8 figures in revenue. We have dozens of people whose lives are changed. I got a picture sent to me a few days ago. Another one of our clients tattooed our logo on their leg. And I'm like, oh my God, but they believe, right? Like this is not our first. These are people who see what we do and they believe in it, because once you find that passion, that thing you'd love to do for free, where the money doesn't matter, suddenly the rest falls into alignment. That aligned resonance we talked about, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, once you find the thing you do for free, everything else falls into place.
I'd add 2 things to that. One is, I think way too many people look for a what, and it's really more about how you want to live your life than what you're going to do. Like you said, a lot of people go, well, I did this for a job, or I have this degree, and those are what things, but how you've gone about your life as an entrepreneur and adventurer and the way you connect with people is really the magic, not what the business happens to be. The business could have been and has been a lot of different things.
Well, and there's a piece to it too, is most people think it's going to be easy or that it has to be hard. You mentioned that earlier. The key is to understand that it will always be both easy and hard. Yeah. Life comes in dualities. When we started Aviator, my wife and I were living on $25 to $30 a week for food for the 2 of us and our baby, and one on the way. That was our budget. We had rice, we had beans, we had ramen noodles when we were feeling fancy. We'd cut some cilantro up into it. Man, it was real fancy. But that's what we lived on. It wasn't easy. It wasn't the slam dunk thing. We took 4 years to make our first profitable year, and we made $31,000 before I paid myself. The IRS audited us. They're like, why would you be in a business where you don't make any money for this long? And they finally were like, okay, I actually asked the auditor, I'm like, did you always want to be an IRS auditor? Is that like, was that your dream? He goes, no, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I was like, oh, well, I'm being the marine biologist. that's what I'm doing.
That's what's going on here. Yeah, I definitely see that. And I put in my book too, that I hate that line, like, find what you love and you'll never work another day in your life. It's like, no, the whole point is to work at it. And think about when you're a kid and outside playing and you're building a fort, or you're, trying to even break up even teams for a pickup basketball game or something. Like, it's a lot of work and effort. You expend a lot of energy and sweat and stuff in things that you love doing. And like you said, there's going to be good days and bad days. We're all going to have to pay our taxes, whether that's easy and fun for us or not. And I think the other thing that you reminded me was this idea of being present in the moment and being who we are. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves sometimes, of worrying about how it's going to pay the bills, or we try to work too far out. We're not even promised the next day. It's like, let's get into a playful state. Let's think about what we would do if we were independently wealthy. Or I go the other way now too with AI. Like, what if robots do everything you need to survive? What if you don't need 15 million? What if you get a universal basic income and we got a, Star Trek replicator making whatever food you want? And
it sounds really boring.
And housing built for robots. Well, what would you do then? You would have to find something you enjoy, and maybe that's your play. So I love that. Your analogy is probably a little bit more fun, but maybe more likely than somebody handing you $15 million is that Elon Musk cracks the code and we're all chilling on the beach, unemployed here within our lifetimes. I don't know. All right, that's too far. You want to play a game and get out of here?
Let's play a game and get out of here.
All right, here we go. We're playing Survey Says. We surveyed 100 people. The top 5 answers are on the card. If you get 2 out of 3 right, you win. I thought I would start off with an easy one, but it's funny because this is a kind of an interesting flying question. We asked 100 people, what's the worst aspect of flying in a plane? Not flying a plane, but being the passenger. What do you think they said?
Other people.
Yes. Coming in at number 5, other people. I had to work down that list a little bit. Crashing was number 1. Turbulence number 2. Takeoff and landing at 3 and 4.
See, as a pilot, it's just the other people. It's the hardest thing about moving to Texas. My airplanes are still in Florida, and I'm used to flying myself everywhere, and I haven't done that in a year and a half since we moved here. It's been heartbreaking because I have to fly a lot with other people.
I agree with you in generally most things. The worst part about it can be other humans. It can also be the best part. Name an animal that grunts.
Pig.
Number 1 answer, 72 points for that one. You nailed it. All right. And last one, name something a hospital patient likes to have nearby. You've spent some time in hospitals. What would you like to have nearby?
My first answer is morphine.
It should be painkiller. It's not on there.
Come on.
Well, I guess technically the call button is on there. The morphine button should be number 2 as well. Family, the remote, and water or ice chips. So you win. You got 2 out of 3 right. You get a free 30-second commercial. The rest of the podcast is yours. How can you help us or we help you?
Oh, man, thank you. First off, it's been an honor to be here with you guys. It's so fun to see your mission start to become reality with the book out now and everything else. It's such an honor. So thank you for having me. If anything I've said has resonated with anyone, feel free to reach out. My website's ericfarewell.com. I'm on all the socials at Eric Farewell, LinkedIn, etc. Send me a message. And if this resonates, I'd be happy to set up some time to talk with you. I do one-on-one coaching, and we have a group coming up in the spring that teaches entrepreneurs how to create this space for freedom so they can actually start to do the somatic work to heal themselves and be the person they want to be for their legacy. So that's me. That's what I do. And it's an honor to be here.
Amazing, super fun. Again, the book Farewell to Normal, Eric Farewell Aviator Show on YouTube or all the socials. A ton of good stuff. Just go to Eric Farewell and check it out and get in on those classes. That'll be awesome. My book, Playful Humans, is available now too. It reached the #1 in the happiness category. Thanks to all of you listening and watching, especially if you made it till the end here. That means you're hardcore on this, and you were the ones that helped me push it up there. So I really appreciate that. And Eric, your time and attention here was amazing too. Great stories, great episode. And until next time, whatever you are, be a good one. Talk to you later.
Keep on chasing the sunshine.